All right, everyone, welcome. Happy Saturday. Hope everyone's doing okay. Made it through the weekend. Made it to the weekend, rather. Uh, yeah, it's raining here actually. Not too hard, but it's definitely raining. It's probably gonna be raining for the next week or something like that. So that's gonna be nice. Get that humidity out of the air and have it be yeah, a little less crappy here. Not much has happened so much since Thursday when I last streamed, but yeah, I was working on Warhammer 40k Battle Sector. On that high difficulty, it is difficult. First mission is just the same, basically. The second mission was I redid it and I got through it okay. And then the third one, I was very close, very close. So I got to try that one again. And yeah, we'll just keep going. Hopefully, eventually by next week, I'll get that last playthrough done. And hopefully, I'll get it done in time to start Humankind. Because Humankind is coming out on the 15th, I think. Which is like Thursday or Saturday. What is today? 7. So it's next Sunday. Next Saturday. Next Saturday is when it's coming out. So I'm looking forward to that a lot. Yeah, other than that, that's all that's going on with me. How about you guys? Anything crazy going on with you for this weekend? Any plans? Anything? No. All right. Well, we have some links that kind of follow up from Thursday's stream, which was talking about racism and slavery and stuff like that. So a little bit on that, and then we'll get into much of the normal variety that we will normally cover on the stream. Capitalism, climate change, and coronavirus is what we do here, right? The 3 C's. But we also do some future tech and things of that nature, sustainability as well. So, whoa. Where Mick, how you doing, man? Russia, Russia, Russia. Tomorrow's the end of the boring Olympic Games. How you doing? How's your weekend so far? Yeah, I've only heard a little bit about some drama with Belarus and someone wanting asylum there in Japan, or yeah, in Japan. That's pretty much all I've heard about that. I haven't watched the Olympics in a very, very long time, very long time. And it's actually something that I think I don't want to say we need to end, but we need to drastically change the way we do things as far as the Olympics is concerned. Like we had this this article. Hold on one moment. Which was showing all of the if everything's fine with her. She's now in Poland with her husband. Oh, okay, good to hear. Good to hear. There's pretty much all these places where the Olympics are held end up being a fucking wasteland afterwards. Let me see if I can find this link. So I was kind of stunned to COVID at the Olympics. Here we go. If you haven't seen this one, take a look at this. This kind of goes through and shows how all the different places where the Olympics were held, they're just going to rot and just nothing is being done with them. These countries spend billions and billions of dollars to get these Olympic stadiums and stuff up, and then it just fucking goes to waste. This is criminal. Criminal. Now, I understand why they do this, but it's harmful for everyone. It's just so harmful. So we need to find a better way of doing this instead of having it go from country to country every 4 years and just building this stuff that's going to go to waste and then just having it go to rot. This has gotta change. We need a much more sustainable way to do this because this is unacceptable. Unfucking acceptable. Especially when all this land just sits there and does nothing for anyone. Right? This could be housing, for the poor. Those are homeless. I mean, this could be used for things that actually make a difference to the society and the country that they're in, instead of just sitting here doing nothing. So it's offensive. I have to figure out how I want to handle this in my policies, because this is going to be a big factor of it. Okay. Good, glad she's going to be okay and that she's in Poland. I've only flown through Poland. Flown through Warsaw to get to Belarus a few times. That's pretty much it. All right. Tokyo OG, probably the worst. Boring because of the pandemic without fans, and also they kill the Japanese people with COVID that appears because of the foreigners. So I can give 4 of 10 in the OG in Tokyo. Yeah, and I'm actually, I talked about this a week or two ago. It's like, no, this last week, this last week, probably on Tuesday. I mean, why the fuck are they even doing this? I mean, it's going to be a massive spreader. It's going to be a COVID hotspot, and everyone's going to be getting COVID off of this, and then they spread it to the rest of the world. I mean, it's super stupid. It's irresponsible. But why do they keep doing it? Because it's all about the money they make. It's not about the lives they destroy. They don't care about the lives they destroy. They just care about the money that they've invested, and then the money that they'll make off of it. That's it. That's all that matters. The money. Just the money. Nothing else. And that's sad. It's so sad. I don't know how many people are going to die off this or have their lives ruined in one way or the other because of COVID being caught or spread from Tokyo, but it's not going to be pleasant. Our priorities are all messed up. Profit is what matters. People in the environment do not, as obviously the Olympics most assuredly show. Okay. February 22 OG in Beijing. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's entire communities devastated just to set up all this stuff, and then it's abandoned. Then they get COVID too on top of it. So yeah, there has to be a better way of doing this. A better way. And something has to be done. All right. To end systemic racism, ensure systemic equality. And this is everything that I've been talking about on my channel, right? The core root of all problems within civilization, human civilization, is inequality. So if you want to fix almost all problems we have, you end inequality. At a war on inequality, then everything else will eventually get better. Probably the media will get a lot of money because probably everyone will watch. Oh yeah, definitely. Oh, definitely. Yeah. Again, yeah, you're right. Advertising is going to be huge. The news channels are going to be huge and all that. They're going to make lots of money off that. But again, it's all about the money, not about the people whose lives are being destroyed or harmed in the process, because they don't care about that. That is a negative externality, something they don't have to worry about. It just pisses me off. Makes me cranky. So yes, this here, exactly right. This is from Alternet, and this is from May of this year, May 27. This is written by the ACLU. Oh, okay, interesting. Over the past 4 years, we grew accustomed to a regular barrage of blatant segregationist-style racism from the White House. Donald Trump tweeted that the squad, 4 Democratic congresswomen who are Black, Latinx, South Asian, should go back to the corrupt countries they came from. That same year, he called Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas, mocking her belief that she might be descended from North American ancestors, which is fucking stupid. She should be made fun of because of that bullshit. But as outrageous as the racist comments Trump regularly spewed were, the racially unjust governmental actions his administration took in the case of COVID-19 didn't take impacted millions more, especially Black and brown people. To begin to heal and move toward real racial justice, we must address not only the harms of the past 4 years, but also the harms tracing back to this country's origins. Racism has played an active role in the creation of our systems of education, healthcare, ownership, and employment in virtually every other facet of life since this nation's founding. Now, on Thursday, we covered 2 articles on critical race theory, and we talked about 2 articles that were talking about covering slavery within our education system. So that's a pretty interesting topic, especially as I'm running for school board and that sort of a thing. That talking about slavery. Jedrick Bender, how you doing? I think there are single individuals that are racist, but not systematic. Well, you'd be totally, completely, totally fucking wrong. Like, mind-blowingly wrong. The United States, from its very inception, was systemically and structurally racist. And it has been. It's, just, I mean, you would have to ignore our entire history to even contemplate saying that. And the people who are racist because of the systemic and structural elements which makes racism a thing within society. And people are not good or bad or racist or not racist in a vacuum. They are sum total of the environment with which they are brought up, and that environment that they are brought up in is a direct result of the systemic and structural elements that bring society together. Laws, culture, history, right? And all that sort of a thing. We are a byproduct of all of that. And our country is racist. Even before the United States was a thing, when we were a British colony, slavery was, 1619 project, right? For 100 years prior to even our country being a thing, almost 200 years. Almost 200 years. We had slavery in the Americas, done by Europeans. So by the time the colonies were really a solid thing, slavery and racism was a part of the laws, a part of the culture, a part of the society at large. It was the way things were done, and it was accepted, and the entertainment and the way people thought of things, the way the people in the colonies dehumanized slaves, took an active part in the dehumanization of them in order to validate that they were doing that, right? So there's years of sociopathy, over 100 years of dehumanization that created racism as a thing prior to the United States even becoming a thing. Whole world sucks, unfortunately. Our poor dear planet Earth, so many terrible things: racism, Russophobia, xenophobia, homophobia, and millions of other disgusting phobias, hatred of each other. All this can give you a headache, but I try not to delve into this problem so much. This is initially a failure. Yeah, and it is. And at the core of all these isms that you're bringing up is inequality. You solve the inequality problem, and a lot of all of those things will go away. More equal everyone is, the less inequality there is, the more social trust there is, the less tribalism there is, the less racism or othering that there is, because everyone has their needs met and they can do what they want and they don't have to worry about this group or that group, because everyone has access to basically the same things. Their, shall we say, their deficiency needs, as far as Maslow's hierarchy of needs is concerned: housing, food, clothes, transportation, education, healthcare, all that sort of stuff is taken care of. Slavery still exists, but bad people start to be smarter, and they can actually hide real slavery. East Europe, Africa. Oh, definitely. I mean, here in the United States, we have it. It's in the form of like we have the largest number of people in jail in human history. I think we have 20% of the world's prisoners are in the United States, and they are rented out for work. And of course, Hillary Clinton got the slave trade going in Libya, right? So there's still slavery definitely going in overt and covert ways, like covert in the United States and overt in Libya and other places like that. So it's still a thing, most definitely. And it exists a lot because of, you know, the inequality problem. The fact that money exists means that slavery will exist, because inequality will exist, because competition will exist. So you honestly, America sucks. Well, yeah, it's not just, that's a true statement. It's not just America. I mean, it's the whole socioeconomic system with which we are stuck with. Well, monetary systems. You get rid of monetary systems, you get rid of capitalism, you get rid of competition, and then everything can get better, but can't get better until we get to that place, which is hard to do, because the United States, you know, it's their whole job to make sure we don't even consider ever getting beyond monetary systems, especially not even beyond capitalism. You know, like as much as the American government didn't like Martin Luther King Jr., he was a pain in their ass. They didn't kill him until after he leaned heavily into his anti-war sentiment. Once he got into that, which threatened corporate profits through the U.S. military industrial complex and the, you know, America's war on America as the largest terrorist organization, right? That's when they killed him. After that, okay, so yes, slavery bad, money makes slavery. I love one video so much, a geography of who hates who. Oh, you got that? Throw it up here. Daily Show's amazing. Is it with Jon Stewart? Because Jon Stewart is the bomb. Oh, you got it? Okay.
Hey, kids.
Oh, it's not. Okay.
Welcome to geography class. What's the capital of Mozambique? I don't know. Google that shit. I am going to teach you geography you won't learn in school but need to know. Like today's lesson, who hates who? That's something you gotta know. If your cab driver is Serbian, you can't be talking about that trip you took to Croatia. You're gonna get your ass thrown out on the street. So I'm gonna tell you who hates who around the globe, but I'm not gonna get into why, because I know I'll get one little thing wrong and then both of them gonna be mad at me, and I don't want Kyrgyzstan in my mentions. Yeah, there they go already. Okay, let's begin. Chinese and Japanese hate each other. Indians and Pakistanis can't stand each other. Vietnamese and Cambodians do not want to be in the same room at all. Turks and Armenians hate each other. Turks and Greeks also hate each other. Turks and Kurds, they hate each other too. Honestly, Turkey is the Nene Leaks of Europe. They're always at the center of some shit. You got the Russians and the Chechens, they always arguing. Hungarians and Roma, Dinka and the Nur, the Irish and the British, Scots and the British, English and the British. Honestly, that whole island hate itself. Ghana and Nigeria. Now, from what I understand about this beef, this one is mostly about rice. See, here's the thing. Nigerians think Ghanaian rice tastes like concrete, and Ghanaians think Nigerian rice is a bigger international crime than their email scams. Fortunately, centuries of colonialism have made both countries too poor to afford a nuke, so it don't really matter that much. Iranians and the Saudis, Saudis and the Houthis, Saudis and the Qataris, Saudis and the Israelis, although now they're becoming friends because they both hate the Iranians more. In a way, Iran is really bringing the Middle East together. You got the Sudan and South Sudan, North Korea and South Korea. Matter of fact, if there's two countries with the same name, they definitely hate each other. Then, of course, you've got the Israelis and the Palestinians. I said I'm not getting into it. God damn. All right, let's wrap this up. Last beef. America and everybody else. Yeah, that's right. I'm gonna give it to you straight, kids. Every other country hates us. They all hate us.
Yep.
Some of them we invaded. Some of them we overthrew. Most of them we bombed. Some of them
Hey man, how you
we
doing?
saved from the Nazis. So I don't know why they
Good.
mad. But it is what it is. The game is the game. But that leads me to my tip of the day, kids. If you ever travel abroad, do what I do. Pretend you're Canadian. Yeah. Put that maple leaf on your head.
That is safer.
Because see, here's the thing. If it's one country that nobody hates, it's Canada. To be honest, I don't know what that's all about. But I'm going to make it work for me. That's it for today, kids.
Oh, that's funny. That is funny. You got back from holiday? Where'd you go? How you been? I haven't heard from you in a while. You got your summer going. Doing anything interesting on your summer? My wife is going to be getting her citizenship. She'll be going next week, not next week, but the week after on the 19th. I think it's a Tuesday or something like that. We'll be doing her oath, and then she'll be becoming a citizen. So we've got that going on. It's kind of cool. Place called Norfolk Broads. Nice rivers and fields and windmills and shit. Hired and lived on a boat for 10 days. Oh, that sounds like fun. Cool. Yes, thank you. Were you fishing? Were you being a fisher person during that time, or just chilling on the boat? What work were you doing? I've heard that Canada's hated by the Philippines. No clue why. Interesting. Just relaxing, driving fun. Okay, all right, cool. That can be fun. Yeah, being on the water can be nice and relaxing. Even when I was in the Navy, sometimes I would go to the aft end because our berthing area, our sleeping area was near the aft end. So we'd go to the aft part and just look out the water, which is nice, relaxing. What just happened with me? First, I moved more centrist. Oh no, but still left-leaning. Yeah, I saw your post about American presidents, and that made me cringe. Bill Clinton, it's horrible. Who else was it? Did you see Obama? No, it was Clinton was in there. I remember that much. He was super bad. I'm a third way guy? Okay. I gotta get you converted to the left. Gotta bring you to the right side. Or to the left side. To the actual left. Yeah. 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 Just Tony. Oh my God. My God, man. Need to be set free. All these war criminals need to be jailed and tried for crimes against humanity. Kind of radical for an imperialist, maybe. But he and Bush orchestrated the whole Iraq warfare thing on a lie. There's paperwork for that. So he should be tried for crimes against humanity. Bush should be, obviously. He's conservative, of course. Obama needs to be because, he murdered people with drones. And, of course, Clinton, well, he broke so many things. Surpluses are bad because it destroys. If you have a surplus in the federal income, that means there's a deficit in the public sector, which means every time you have a surplus, you have a depression and a recession right afterwards. Yep. Surpluses are bad in the federal government. I'm pretty sure that a lot of countries hate Russia, the UK, and the US because they're always ruled by criminals. That's exactly right. That is exactly right. The UK is one of the original imperialists, and then the United States took over from that. Highest public spending ever, lowest inequality ever, best public services ever, peace in North Ireland, devolution, huge social reform. Okay, cool, but he still murdered people for fun and profit, though. Still murdered people for fun and profit. Sure, we can give him props for those things, but he should still be in jail as a war criminal. as should Obama. Pretty much every U.S. president should be. Because, war criminals. Be me. It's true, but I think any PM would have done that. Saddam kind of rage doesn't. Now, the only reason why they went in there is for the West to steal his oil. It had nothing to do with UN resolutions. It all had to do with oil. Every single military action has nothing to do with anything besides money. Afghanistan was about opium for the Sackler family, which created the opioid the opioid pandemic here, right? It's from Iraq. Yeah. Oh, It may not be directly from there. It may have hit refineries in Saudi Arabia or other places, right? Because it'll been put through different countries and different places for processing. So you don't actually know where your oil is actually sourced. So it could be. We don't know. Like my cars, I have no idea either. I don't have any way of tracking it without spending like a whole week of figuring it out. Okay, so I get stuff from this place. Now, where do they get theirs? Okay, so they've got this label on there. Okay, so what does Mobile own, and where do they get their stuff? It would be just a nightmare to try and. It is, and it's always going through all the corporate shells, and they may send the crude from here over to a different country and company to process, and then sell it to another country or another company to process or to sell or whatever. Yeah, you just have no idea where the stuff is coming from. No idea. Have you read through my policies at all? If you're going more centrist, this has to be stopped. Have you read my blog at all? Need to do more reading here. I have. It's very good. Well, read it a few more times. Off top, but what's going on? Yeah, we kind of got booted off topic, but that's okay. Yeah, I'm done, but it seems that almost every Middle Eastern country is at war. Yes. Yep. A lot of that's going to be because of Islam and the kind of fundamentalism inherent to that. There is the more conservative fundamentalist a religion is, the more likely they are to be at war. Giuliani, Cuomo may be guilty, but we used to have trials before convictions. That's what Cuomo's Democrat allies denied President Trump. There would be poetic justice if they did that to Cuomo, but it would be unjust. Oh, that's fair. He's guilty as hell, as much as, Biden is guilty, as Trump is guilty, right? Ultimately, Democrats will get more of a playing than will Republicans, because at least the Republicans are overt in their corruption and, their sexism, whereas Democrats tend to be at least a little more careful with it. Although Biden has been fairly overt about it, and his ass should be in jail too for all sorts of abuse of power. Giuliani, Cuomo, throw all those fuckers in jail. Every single one of them. Advocacy groups that believe all women silent on Cuomo. Right. And also silent on Biden as well. Right? If it's a Democrat, doesn't matter. If it's a Republican, then we can yell. If it's a Democrat, no, we can't. We can't attack Democrats. We can't hold them responsible for the horrors that they've done, right? Fucking put Cuomo in jail. Biden in jail. Put all these fuckers in jail. They're all corrupt. Off with their heads, goddammit. I mean, Republicans are corrupt. Democrats are corrupt. Democrats are corrupt almost. Well, I mean, they're both raping women and fondling them and all sorts of stuff. I mean, Biden should have been in jail even before Trump became a thing because he was a war criminal with Obama, right? I mean, if you even just want to take the lack of humanity that he has had by fighting against trying to lower Social Security. He's the architect of the 1993 crime reform bill, which gave us a 3 strikes rule, which put people of color disproportionately in jail. I mean, the crimes against humanity that he has done, yeah, fuck that dude. Seriously. Biden, bad. Democrats, not good. Democrats are the devil. Okay, they're not the devil, but close enough. Oh, yeah, I heard about this through, right. I heard about this through, Breaking Points with, Crystal and Sagar. They kind of went over this. His brother was a big part of dealing with Andrew's shitstorm, and his show didn't cover it, and all the other shows around CNN did do it. Yeah, yep, I saw that. I'm a bit torn on that. I get, from what Crystal and Sagar said, I get what they're saying, and they had a valid point. What are we here? In Turtle 2, though, in the 70s, he said something like segregation should still exist. Yeah. Oh, yeah. He worked with KKK members, or like the Grand Dragon of the KKK and stuff. Kamala, fuck Kamala. My God, dude. Get me started, God damn it. Yeah, Kamala's horrible, too. She knew that there were people in jail who were innocent, and they had evidence to set them free, and she said no to that. Kamala will be president and Pelosi will be VP. No, that's not going to happen. Kamala is not going to be president. I can't imagine they'll put her as the next presidential candidate, because her ratings are so fucking low. I mean, people really don't like her at all. I mean, it's lower than just about anyone that's been a VP. I mean, it's horrific. I have joked, like before, we got to the election here, that within 6 months to 2 years, Dementia Joe would step down and Kamala would be president. Now, that might still be a possibility. If that does happen, then maybe you are right. If she does become the president because Biden steps down, then yeah, okay, fine. They'll probably run her. But Pelosi's not going to run VP. She's got too much power where she's at. Either she'll retire or she'll stay in her nice little nestled place there in the House. They need to find someone younger to run so that they can keep use identity politics to appeal to the newer generations, much like they've done with Buttigieg as a candidate, because he hits so many different things on the identity politics thing. That people's brains turn off and they don't realize how fucking horrific he is. Happens, then hatred in the U.S. in percent will be more than 999%. It will be trash can. Biden stands by his statement from March. Yeah, and I saw this too. Dude. Yeah, and
So will you now?
He says that Cuomo should resign. He's a fucking, and I posted this on Facebook even. The irony and the total fucking hypocrisy in him saying this it's off the goddamn charts. If Cuomo should step down, then fucking Biden should step down. Right? Urgh. Oh my God, the rage I have. So much rage. Absolute corruption. Well, it's hard to really hate. He won't agree to impeaching Cuomo, though. Could be. Yeah. He might. Just saying it is going to be enough, even though he's going to get pushback from it because, he's obviously should be having the same thing happen to him. But, the Democrats are going to try and shield him and protect him, much like they haven't previously. I mean, this has been going on for a very long time, probably decades with Cuomo. So it's just a matter of paying off the right people and move on so everyone forgets about it. The likelihood that a Democrat is going to get taken out is very, very small. But hopefully, I'm wrong. Hopefully he'll get wrecked. But we'll see. He's too rich and too powerful for anything to honestly happen. He's basically immune to anything. Laws are for the poors, are for the plebes, not for those who are richer than hell. If you have money, laws don't apply to you. That's much of what's going to happen, most likely, with Cuomo. Which is a shame, because he's pretty shitty. Just like Obama, just like Clinton, Biden, fuck them all. All right. Really went off the trail there. That's okay. Good stuff, though. But as outrageous as the racist comments Trump regularly spewed were, the racially unjust governmental actions his administration took, and in the case of COVID-19 didn't take, impacted millions more, especially black and brown people. Because Trump didn't do anything. To begin to heal and move forward toward real racial justice, we must address not only the harms of the past 4 years, but also the harms of tracing back to this country's origins. Racism has played an active role in the creation of our systems of education, healthcare, ownership, and employment in virtually every other facet of life since this nation's founding. So yes, this is very, very key. In this past year or so, it's become much more obvious about this. Teaching history, teaching slavery as an integral part of how our country became to be, and not just our country, but the rest of the countries of the developed world, is going to be super important, not only to understand how our economic systems grew, but also how our societies and our cultures and our cultural things develop as an offshoot or as influenced by slavery. Our history has shown us that it's not enough to take racist policies off the books if we are going to achieve true justice. Those past policies have structured our society and created deeply rooted patterns and practices that can only be disrupted and reformed with new policies of similar strength and efficacy. In short, a systemic problem requires a systemic solution. To combat racism, we must pursue systemic equality. And again, my policies, this is really what my policies are all about. You cannot fix one problem if you do not fix all the problems. And all the problems at its core are all, to a point, created by inequality. All my policies are about the destruction of inequality. And that's such an important thing when it comes to education, too. Inequality in education is devastating. And then to really battle that, you have to get into the biopsychosocial harms of inequality, and poverty, and that sort of a thing. And it's if you're going to fight for equality in education, you can't do that without fighting for economic inequality, because poverty is devastating to children. It literally creates a brain damage in children who suffer in poverty. So this is, and then there are things you can do in school, and this is a big part of my educational policies: teaching compassion, nonviolent conflict, teaching conflict resolution, nonviolent communication, compassion, empathy, meditation, and things of that nature, in order to help to have our children have a belief system that's more grounded in our interdependence, connecting us together, than one that pulls us apart. What is systemic racism? A system is a collection of elements that are organized for a common purpose. Racism in America is a system that combines economic, political, and social components. That system specifically disempowers and disenfranchises black people while maintaining and expanding implicit and explicit advantages for white people, leading to better opportunities in jobs, education, and housing, and discrimination in the criminal legal system. For example, the country's voting systems empower white voters at the expense of voters of color, resulting in an unequal system of governance in which those communities have little voice and representation, even in policies that directly impact them. And if you want to take a look, there Dan Price had an amazing number of stuff posted on Twitter, which I went ahead and I collected here in one of my posts. I have a post here about the black on black crime statistic or whatever. If you go there, you go to the bottom, evidence of systemic and structural racism. If you really want to get into that, there's a whole bunch of data here. This almost all of this here is from Dan Price, and here's a link to that where he started posting this. I found all the links and I posted them all here. And it goes everything from ownership to education to businesses to crime, elections, health, economics, which is a big one, and so on. So it kind of shows the evidence of the systemic and structural racism, as we can find it easily here. So that if you do wonder if there is this sort of a thing, systemic and structural racism to our country, well, you can start here and start checking out the evidence right here. So it'll be evidence of systemic and structural racism, and that will be right here. All right, systemic equality is a systemic solution. In the years ahead, the ACLU will pursue administrative and legislative campaigns targeting the Biden-Harris administration and Congress. We will leverage legal advocacy to dismantle systemic barriers and will work with our affiliates to change policies nearer to the communities most harmed by these legacies. The goal is to build a nation where every person can achieve their highest potential unhampered by structural and institutional racism. Okay. To begin, in 2021, we believe the Biden administration and Congress should take the following crucial steps to advance systemic equality. Now, I wonder how much of this I already have in my policies. I'm just hoping that I have all of what they're going to say below here, in addition to a whole lot more that they haven't added. Let's see what they have. Voting rights. The administration must use an executive order creating a Justice Department lead staff position on voting rights violations in every U.S. attorney office. Okay, that's interesting. We're seeing a flood of unlawful restrictions on voting across the country and at every level of state and local government. This nationwide problem requires nationwide investigatory and enforcement resources, even if it requires new training and approval protocols. A new voting rights enforcement program with the participation of all 93 U.S. attorney offices is the best way to help ensure nationwide enforcement of voting rights laws. These assistant U.S. attorneys should begin by ensuring that every American in the custody of the Bureau of Prisons who is eligible to vote can vote and monitor the census and redistricting process to fight the dilution of voting power in communities of color. Okay, so I've never thought of this, but this is interesting. I guess I approach this a slightly different way. We're also calling Congress to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Amendment Act to finally create fair and equal national voting system, the cause for which John Lewis devoted his life. Okay, so the way I approach it is essentially I say we need to restore the Voting Rights Act, which was gutted by the Supreme Court. And then we need to extend the Voting Rights Act over all of the states. Because originally it was only certain select states in the South. We just need to extend it to all of the states. Now, albeit what they are talking about here might be better, because I have no idea. Well, this sounds pretty cool anyhow. In the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, let's take a look at what this is. I've heard of it, but I don't know what it actually goes through. Okay, too much legal speak. I don't want to read it like this. My brain will fall off. What does it contain? Okay, modernizing Voting Rights Act formula determining which states and localities have pattern of discrimination, ensuring that last-minute voting changes does not adversely affect voters by requiring officials to publicly announce all voting changes at least 180 days before the election, expanding the government's authority to send federal observers to any jurisdiction where there may be substantial risk and discrimination at the polls on election day and during early voting period. Okay, so those are okay, I guess. Okay, all right, sounds good. Student debt. Black borrowers pay more than other students for the same degrees and graduate with an average of $7,400 more in debt while they're white than their white peers. In the years following graduation, the debt gap more than triples. Nearly half of black borrowers were defaulted in 12 years. In other words, for black Americans, the American dream costs more. Last week, Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Senator Elizabeth Warren, along with House Representatives Ayanna Pressley, Maxine Walters, and others, called on President Biden to cancel up to $50,000 in federal student loan debt. I know, that's what they keep saying, but he can fucking cancel all of it. So this is just, it's a fucking cop-out. We couldn't agree more. By forgiving $50,000 of student debt, President Biden can unleash pent-up economic potential in black communities while relieving them of a burden that forestalls so many hopes and dreams. Black women in particular will benefit from this executive action as they are proportionally the most indebted group of all Americans. Yeah, and again, it's a great start, but they should be getting rid of all debt, all student debt, period. They need to get rid of every single part of it, every single one of it. Fucking Democrats. Postal banking. In both low and high income majority black communities, traditional bank branches are 50% more likely to close than in white communities. The result is that nearly 50% of black Americans are unbanked or underbanked. The American dream only exists in the US. LOL. Yeah, the American dream does not exist in the US. If you want the American dream, you have to go to a Nordic country. It's not here. It's not possible here anymore since probably the 70s. Because our level of inequality has risen so high to the highest it is in anywhere in the developed world. American dream is a lie in this country. What does American dream actually mean? Well, the ability to basically provide for yourself and your family. Typically, it originated when a single person could work and a mother could stay home and take care of the family. And it's primarily what it is. That's what it originally was. A single breadwinner, one parent stays home and takes care of the children. And you go to school, you can buy a house and a car on one income. That's kind of the quote American dream there, which is not at all possible in the United States. Especially now that property prices are going up and up, especially once the eviction moratorium goes over. Blackstone snarfs up most of the things, and everyone's going to be paying $1,500, $1,200, $3,000 for rent because they want everyone to rent and no one to own anything. It is bad. It's super bad. That started with Obama, of course, with the subprime mortgage. Do you? Yeah, it's really bad. Started with Obama first, and then now it's happening now because of the pandemic and the Democrats doing jack shit about anything because they don't fucking care. They don't get paid to care about the people. They get paid to get their corporate payday. So, doesn't matter. You and I don't matter. We don't matter at all. And many more pay than $2,000 in fees associated with subprime financial institutions, or over their lifetime, those fees can add up to as much as 2 years of annual income for the average black family. The U.S. Postal Service can and should meet this crisis by providing competitive, low-cost financial services to help advance economic Inequality. We call on President Biden to appoint new members to the Postal Board of Governors so that the post office can do the work of providing essential services to every American. Yeah, I have this in my policies too. Postal banking's in there as well. Fair housing. Laughing. Across the country, millions of people are living in communities of concentrated poverty, including 26% of all black children. The Biden administration should again implement the 215 affirmatively furthering fair housing rule, which required localities that receive federal funds for housing to investigate and address barriers to fair housing and patterns or practices that promote bias. Well, raise the fucking minimum wage. That would be one thing. Universal health care, the usual stuff. 1980, the average black person lived in a neighborhood that was 62% black and 31% white. By 2010, the average black person's neighborhood was 48% black and 34% white. Reinstating the Obama-era fair housing rule would combat this ongoing segregation and set us on a path to true integration. Okay, Congress should also pass the American Housing and Economic Mobility Act or a similar measure to finally redress the legacy of redlining and break down the walls of segregation once and for all. Okay, that sounds good. I don't know anything about this. That sounds good. Redlining bad. Oh my God, it's so small. My eyes. Looks like a grant's going on here. Broadband access. To realize broadband's potential to benefit our democracy and connect us to one another, all people in the United States must have equal access to broadband and must be made affordable for the most vulnerable. Yet 15% of American households with school-aged children do not have subscriptions to any form of broadband, including 1/4 of black households. An additional 23% of African Americans are smartphone-only internet users, meaning they lack traditional home broadband service but do own a smartphone, which is insufficient to attend class, do homework, or apply for a job. The Biden administration, Federal Communications Commission, and Congress must develop and implement plans to increase funding for broadband and expand universal access. Okay, so we do this by municipalizing broadband access. Internet should be a utility and it should be municipalized, basically controlled by the government instead of being a for-profit institution. You need to do that for utilities as well. You need to municipalize utilities too. Enhance refundable child tax credits. The United States faces a crisis of child poverty. Increase minimum wage. Oh my God. Minimum wage, universal health care, universal education, universal sick time, right? And universal access to daycare. Then if you really want to be aggressive, UBI on top of it. 17% of all American children are impoverished, a rate higher than not just peer nations like Canada and UK, but Mexico and Russia as well. Currently, more than 50% of Black and Latinx children in the U.S. do not qualify for the full benefit, compared to 23% of white children, and nearly 1 in 5 Black children do not receive any credit at all. To combat this crisis, President Biden and Congress should enhance the child tax credit and make it fully refundable. If we enhance the child tax credit, we can cut child poverty by 40% and instantly lift over 50% of Black children out of poverty. Okay, but is this every month, though? I thought this was just once in your taxes. I'm not sure, though. Now, if it was every month, that would be like a UBI sort of a thing, which would be a good thing. Reparations. We cannot repair harms that we have not fully diagnosed. We must commit to a thorough examination of the impact of the legacy of chattel slavery on racial inequality today. In 2021, Congress must pass H.R. 40, which would establish a commission to study reparations and make recommendations for Black Americans. Okay, that sounds good. That's in my policies too. The long view. For the past century, the ACLU has fought for racial justice in legislatures and in courts, including through several landmark Supreme Court cases. While the court has not always ruled in favor of racial justice, incremental wins throughout history have helped chip away at different forms of racism, such as school segregation, Brown versus Board of Education, racial bias in the criminal legal system, Powell versus Alabama, and the Scottsboro Boys, and marriage inequality, Loving versus Virginia. That was huge. While these landmark victories initiated necessary reforms, they were only a starting point. Systemic racism continues to pervade the lives of Black people through voter suppression, lack of financial services, housing discrimination, and other areas. More than anything, doing this work has taught the ACLU that we must fight on every front in order to overcome our country's legacies of racism. This is what our systemic equality agenda is about. Yeah, and that's pretty much what I kind of say. You can't solve one problem by trying to solve one problem because everything is interdependent. If you want to solve inequality in pay, then you need to solve inequality in healthcare, education, voting, all those things. In the weeks ahead, we will both expand on our views of why these campaigns are crucial to systemic equality and signal the path this country must take. We will also dive into our work to build organizing, advocacy, and legal power in the South, a region with a unique history of racial oppression and violence alongside a rich history of anti-racist organizing and advocacy. We are committed to 4 principles throughout this campaign: reconciliation, access, prosperity, and empowerment. Okay, we hope that our actions can meet our ambitions to, as Dr. King said, lead this nation to live out the true meaning of its creed. Okay, these all sound good. I don't know the specifics of some of, pretty much most of what the specific acts are, but they sound good overall. All right, there you go. And this is correct. This is correct. You can't end racism without ending inequality, and that's everything that I've said here. The only way to deal with racism at its core is to commit a war on inequality in every single facet you find it, from housing to healthcare to income to internet to transportation and clothes, food, whatever it is. Because the very core driver of racism is inequality. The higher inequality is, the higher that public distrust is, and therefore tribalism, racism go as a byproduct of that. So if you want to lower racism, you lower inequality, and you increase equality, which increases public trust and decreases tribalism, and so on. Right? So there you go. Questions, comments, suggestions on those things? All right, another one from Alternet. This is from this month. Bombshell paper finds the federal judges guilty of the most racist sentencing. It's from the 2nd. So this is just from, just from this week. It has been long known that people of color get harsher criminal sentences in the federal criminal court for the same crimes as white people. The federal criminal justice system, the powerful U.S. Sentencing Commission itself, has come to this conclusion. The numbers obtained and analyzed by researchers usually have shown this on a bird's eye level view only. That is by design. The U.S. Judicial Conference has a policy of screening out judges' names from federal databases of cases, claiming that it is concerned about the potential for judge-specific information taken out of context to be misinterpreted, the administrative burden of compiling information to satisfy outside requests, and the availability to researchers of information from individual courts. Right. The policy, in other words, protects federal judges, despite the fact that they already received the utmost insulation from populist anger, as well as the democratic process. Thanks to the Constitution, they all receive lifetime tenure. Yeah, and then there's a movement here to change that to 20 years. And I think I've added that to my policies. So lifetime is a bit much. Change it to 20 years. You know, it's one generation from when they start. That should be more than enough to get new blood in. 6 academics have just published a research study in SOC-RX V4, whatever that is, that might go down in history as a single paper that pissed off the legal profession more than any other. It's titled, "The Most Discriminatory Federal Judges Give Black and Hispanic Defendants at least double the sentences of white defendants." Summarizes the big picture story succinctly, but does more than the headlines suggest. Thanks to a newly created database and the research done here, we now know the names of the judges handing down the most racist sentences from the federal bench. We know in terms of the disparate sentences these judges give to Black and Latinx defendants, compared with those they give to white defendants for the same crimes. A handful of judges are guilty of what can only be described as horrifically racist sentencing. According to the data, the single worst offender on the federal bench is Senior U.S. District Court Judge C. Darnell Jones II, appointed by President George Bush in 2008. He rose up in the ranks of the legal profession after starting his career as a public defender in Philadelphia. Despite that background, Judge Jones's sentences for Black people are 126% harsher, and for Latinx people, 156% harsher than his sentences for white people. Federal defense lawyers practicing in Philly might start seriously considering motions to remove Judge Jones from their clients' cases. Ethically speaking, Judge Jones could also resign. That sounds good. The same goes for 3 other federal judges who demonstrated racist sentencing disparities on a similar scale. Judge Timothy J. Savage, Judge Stanley R. Chesler, and Judge Richard R. Arcara. Each of these 3 judges was appointed by Republican President George Bush or Reagan, of course. And like Judge Jones, perhaps unsurprisingly for some observers, they all practice in the Northeast. Unsurprisingly, they are all white, and 2 of them are former prosecutors. Judge Chesler was an assistant district attorney in the Bronx and a federal line prosecutor in New Jersey. Similarly, Judge Arcara was the U.S. attorney for the Western District of New York, as well as the elected district attorney of Erie County, New York in the mid-'80s. The mixed crew of academics on the projects, 4 of the 6 researchers are in math or computer science fields, have hit the accountability nail on the head. This sort of work absolutely needs to be done to change the system. Yeah, and this is important. Once you guys have access to data, then you can really go towards working towards fixing problems. If you don't have data, it's hard to do anything. And this is why, within a resource-based economy, having open access to all data is going to be so important, because you're going to be able to quickly you'll have free access to the data, so you can start crunching the numbers and figuring out why things are broken and how do we fix them quickly. And having all that data hidden does nothing to anyone but to protect these racist and problematic judges, and does nothing to allow us to actually fix the problems. As is designed, right? Our system ensures that few mechanisms, as opposed to simple outcry, are in place for the public to register its disapproval of specific federal judges. But most human beings are capable of feeling shame. These judges will now likely be asked by people in their personal circles, their families and friends, as well as professional peers, why they wield bigotry like a weapon when they don their judicial robes. It's deeply unsatisfactory, but in the absence of needed formal accountability mechanisms, such pressure could be the most likely way for these lifelong appointees to reconsider their careers. Absolutely nothing justifies the gratuitous damage they have inflicted. Okay, so there you go. And another thing I have considered, and this isn't necessarily even realistic, when people go to court, doing everything you can to strip out from their case and their file and everything like that, that would identify them, their name, address, phone number, zip code, gender even, and to have someone speak up, someone else be like the court appointed speaker for this person, for whoever the defendant is, so that you still don't have the voice and inflection and that sort of thing to try and give away who this person might be. Yeah, it's much more difficult, but it could be possible. All right, there is that. Questions, comments, and suggestions. Anything? It's super quiet. So quiet in here. All right, from ThruthOut, Martin Luther King Jr.'s family and civil rights leaders call for voting rights march on Washington. This is the picture from his "I Have a Dream" speech, right? Crowds gather at National Mall during the March 28th, during the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom in Washington, D.C. on August 28th. I think this is the "I Have a Dream" speech. I have a dream. Yeah, this is from the 6th. This is from yesterday. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 is 56 years old today, but instead of simply celebrating the historic law that helped combat Jim Crow-era suppression of black voters, civil rights leaders are busy organizing mass action to bring a fresh slate of voting rights legislation to President Biden's desk. The nation has reached a tipping point, they say, and the fight to save democracy from modern forms of voter suppression has never been more urgent. An increasingly conservative Supreme Court has gutted the Voting Rights Act, allowing the states with legacies of discrimination to pass laws restricting access to the ballot. Now, the thing is, like, the very next day after the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act, there was like 10 or 11 states that immediately had laws out there to suppress voting. I mean, just literally the next day. It was horrific. Voting rights advocates say ballot restrictions specifically target lower income and black and brown voters, and voter suppression laws are designed to maintain a minority rule for the predominantly white Republican Party. Yep, August 28th will mark the anniversary of the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, the mass rally in Washington, D.C. that brought us Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech, and set the stage for the Voting Rights Act and other civil rights victories in Congress. King's family and other civil rights leaders are now calling for another mass march on Washington on August 28th that will turn up the heat on Democrats, who have so far failed to pass 3 voting rights bills, languishing in a divided Senate. Yeah, electoral reform is a huge thing that we need to do. I mean, it is the first bill, it is the first policies that I set forward, and it's pretty stunning how much you actually have to pass in order to have anything even vaguely similar to a democracy in this country. I mean, it's there's so much that needs to be passed. Financing of elections, of course, is huge. News and media reform, voting reform, ethical reform for parties and processes, and other stuff here. Constitutional amendments, and an electoral college, right? We need to have a voter's Bill of Rights, so it is explicitly constitutional. So the right to vote is constitutionally protected. We need to have voting as an explicitly stated right. We need to shift to proportional representation and shift to consensus-based democratic principles. Along with ranked choice voting, that'll be kind of part of that as well. Financing of elections need to be only public funded. That's it. We need to corporate media, like the Fairness Doctrine, undo the Telecommunications Act of 1996 under Clinton, break out the media conglomerates. Voting reports need to be held till the election is done. Require exit polls. Equal airtime. Government strongly pushing election awareness. Eliminate caucuses. Require open primaries. Eliminate superdelegates. No block party voting required. Eliminate requirements for write-in candidates. Ranked choice voting. And the Electoral College. State funding for IDs and voting. Open voting. Yeah, ethical reform for parties, that's huge because they don't have anything. Start your voting on what, like a Friday? Then have that day a holiday. Nonpartisan redistricting is huge. Poll workers should be paid time off. Term limits should not be a thing. Felons should vote. Permanent resident immigrants should have the right to vote in local elections, since the local elections do directly impact them. Natural-born president, we need to get rid of that requirement too. Territories need to be turned into states and given votes, like DC as well. Lots of stuff. Lots of stuff need to change. Okay, we find ourselves at a very critical and crucial juncture of our nation because we are promoting democracy all over the world. It's laughable. But we have the audacity to suppress democracy at home, said Martin Luther King Jr. III, King Jr.'s son, during a call with reporters on Thursday. Civil rights leaders and activists across the country say Senate Democrats must carve out an exception to the filibuster and pass the legislation ahead of the next election to combat a wave of state voter suppression laws fueled by right-wing conspiracy theories and former President Trump's racist lies about voter fraud. Yeah, you need to get rid of the filibuster. That has to go away. That has to go away. Nationwide, 18 states have passed 30 laws that restrict ballot access in one way or another in the months since Trump lost the 2020 election and drummed up conspiracy theories about voter fraud. According to the Brennan Center for Justice, the same time period, 25 states have enacted 54 laws to expand access to the ballot, partly in reaction to the way in which early and absentee voting ballooned in 2020 due to COVID pandemic. Yeah, early access is important. Honestly, when you look at that as an idea, pretty much that entire month prior to election day, people should be able to vote early. I mean, they can receive their ballot, they can do it online, they can go in and do the vote. I mean, it should be the more time, we don't want to be crazy about this, right? A month is more than enough to make sure everyone has the ability to go and vote, right? And making sure that, by law, people have time off to go do this, right? That should be considered paid time off. I think that is for the most part, but I don't think, my job, I think it is, but I don't think, I don't know if it actually is. While Biden has made it clear that he supports voting rights legislation, Sharpton said that the president would not commit to changing Senate filibuster rules, of course, because he's a fucking fraud, which would require Democrats to find 10 Republican votes to pass certain legislation. Two conservative Democrats, Senator Senator Joe Fuckhead Manchin in West Virginia, and Senator Kirsten Sinema, because she's fucking horrible too, continue to oppose changing filibuster rule because they're fucking Republicans. But organizers hope a historic turnout on August 28th will encourage even these lawmakers to stand on the right side of history. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. They're playing the rotating villain thing, so they're not going to do it because that's why they're getting paid. Lyndon Johnson did not lead the Voting Rights Act movement. He signed the bill, Sharpton said. Joe Biden will sign the bill, and we are the ones who are going to make sure he has something to sign. A coalition of dozens of civil rights and racial justice groups is also organizing mass rallies in Atlanta, Georgia, and Phoenix, Arizona, two states where Republican-controlled legislatures have passed what advocates say are broad voter suppression laws that restrict access to the ballot. A challenge to the Arizona law citing the Voting Rights Act made its way to the Supreme Court, where conservative and moderate justices recently upheld the state's restrictions on absentee voting, setting a precedent that effectively pulled the few remaining teeth from the Voting Rights Act. Yeah, this has been the Supreme Court, under its conservative majority, is gutted the Voting Rights Act. So much for fucking democracy in this country. This will further help to push our country to be more, to be more classist as it was, and more racist, right? Because people who are doing well enough to have vacation time, sick time, are the ones who are going to be voting, whereas people of color are disproportionately cast into poverty and much more difficult circumstances. Therefore, it's very much more difficult for them to have their voice heard or to even have the chance to vote. It's pretty fucking ridiculous. In Georgia, Republicans passed sweeping ballot restrictions that sparked national outrage after unprecedented turnout among black voters helped sway the 2020 elections. Like other southern states, Georgia is a former Jim Crow state with a history of suppressing the black vote on a large scale. Prior to 2013, Georgia was required by the Voting Rights Act to clear significant changes to state and local elections with the federal government. However, the Supreme Court gutted the so-called pre-clearance section of the Voting Rights Act in 2013 and removed this requirement, ruling in effect that discrimination is a thing of the past. Right, and this is exactly what we need to return to. We need to This needs to be a thing, not just for the southern states, but for all states in the union. Any change to voting or elections process in any country or in any state needs to be put by the federal government. Voting rights and racial justice groups are now focused on the federal legislation S1 for the People Act of 2021 and elections reform bill introduced by Democrats that would curb partisan gerrymandering, establish national standards for voter registration, reform campaign finance rules, and expand early and absentee voting, among other measures. They are also pushing the Democrats to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, which would restore pre-clearance protections of the Voting Rights Act. Okay, that's what I was talking about, which is good. Activists are also pushing for representation in Congress for voters in Washington, D.C., where many voters are black and brown. Yes, so this is my policies too, right? D.C. and the other territories need to have representation because they don't have representation. I think they have the ability to speak in Congress, but they do not have the ability to vote. So their voices are not actually heard when it comes to voting for stuff. Republicans have panned the For the People Act as an unnecessary partisan power grab that would infringe on the rights of states. White supremacists have long evoked states' rights to combat federal efforts to end slavery and racial discrimination. That's right, yep, because they say the Civil War was about states' rights, right? Exactly, it is about states' rights. States' rights, they need to finish the fucking sentence. States' rights to own slaves, you white supremacist fucks, right? States' rights to be racist. Right, exactly. Manchin has also said that he opposes the voting rights legislation, making its passage in the evenly divided Senate virtually impossible unless the latest unless the latest, the mass march on Washington can change a lawmaker's mind. Republicans blocked the bill from coming up for debate in June, and Manchin said he prefers a bipartisan approach to the election. Yeah, fuck Manchin. If you want bipartisan, you're effectively working with the terrorists. You're working with a bunch of sociopaths to fuck up whatever it is you want to pass. Come on, dude. Don't be a... Oh, God. So horrible. However, Manchin and at least one moderate Republican have voiced tentative support for the John Lewis legislation that would restore the key pre-clearance protections once provided by the Voting Rights Act. Sharpton has met with Manchin and said the senator is waiting on fellow lawmakers to release the final language of the bill. Still, Democrats would need to overcome Republican filibuster, and that means finding 10 GOP votes or changing Senate rules. At least temporarily. Yeah, they need to fucking get rid of the goddamn filibuster. Seriously. And historically, the filibuster is primarily almost always used for racist reasons. Every American should recognize this moment for the tipping point that it is, said Andy Pringle, the political and strategic campaigns director for March On, the coalition planning the voting rights rallies. King III said that back in early 1965, there were not enough votes in Congress to pass the Voting Rights Act. However, the original March on Washington had already made history, and civil rights activists were organizing and marching across the country. They marched in Selma, Alabama, where protesters were infamously attacked by police on Bloody Sunday, generating images that changed the conversation and paved the way for Voting Rights Act to pass. Now, civil rights leaders are preparing to march once again, hoping to pull the nation's attention toward Congress. Organizers said social distancing will be encouraged at the rallies, and free COVID tests and masks will be available. Okay, good. I'm confident that we are going to get something, and the fact that the matter is we're not giving up, King III said. Okay. Election reform, yes, is a huge, huge deal, and that's the second part of my policies. Educational reform comes first, then electoral reform, and then, war and terrorism, and environment, and everything else comes next. All right, there you go. Questions on that, on elections or anything? Cucumbers? Scorpions? Anything? Quiet. It's super quiet. What? Nothing? All right. Move on to some ridiculous COVID stuff from World Socialist Web Site. Should be one word. This is from August 4th, just a few days ago. Biden administration promotes fully opening schools amid surge of Delta variant. Now, I, as someone who's running for school board and I have a daughter, this is fucking infuriating. In my school district also said they wanted to open up school in September without masks. I am fucking livid at this. So pissed. The United States is in the midst of a massive surge of COVID-19 infections due to the spread of the highly infectious and virulent Delta variant of SARS-CoV-2. In the past month alone, the 7-day moving average of daily new cases has skyrocketed by over 500% to exceed 91,000 as of Monday. Amid this deepening surge of the pandemic, the Biden administration released a document Monday making clear that the drive to fully reopen schools over the coming weeks will continue apace. This is despite the fact that as of July 29th, only 28% of 12 to 15-year-olds in the U.S. were fully vaccinated, while children under 12-year-olds will likely not be eligible for any vaccine throughout the fall semester. Yeah, and this is fucking, it's so stupid. See, for Democrats in Biden, it's just about opening up. That is all they care about. They don't care about the people who are going to die and whose lives are going to be destroyed, because as far as everyone else is going to be concerned, oh, we're opening up schools. See, everything's okay, right? We've got immunity. We've got enough vaccination, right? Everything's just going to be fine because it doesn't affect me. And then it's going to. And then Biden and the Democrats aren't going to be held accountable. So much stupid. Pure sociopathy of Democrats and Biden. They just want to open up so they look good, so they give the Biden administration. Yeah, so the CDC is just giving in to political pressure from the Biden administration to give the Biden administration a win so that they look good. It's not that they're trying to open up because it's safe to do so. Somniac NFT, how does the statement make you feel? Both Democrats and Republicans are far right due to the rest of the world. They have extremely similar principles and agendas. Both have extremists. Both stand behind keeping both rich. Okay, well, I most of it, sure, but they are both not far right. The Republicans are far right lunatic fringe. Democrats are center right. They're not. Democrats aren't far right, but they are definitely right leaning. They are both fascist, most assuredly. Both stand behind keeping the rich richer and the poor poor. Yes, I definitely agree with that. Yeah. It's just a matter of how far right are the Democrats and the Republicans. I talk about that. Talk about that in here, don't I? My post on lesser of two evils voting. I talk about it in one or two of my posts. Oh, thank you so much for the follow. Yeah, so kind of here, it shows, you know, the shift of American politics to the right, and then that's huge. I don't think I have an image here looking at specifically as compared to Europe. I don't. But I need to. Yeah, I need to put that something like that in here. Maybe I have that in my other post. Hold on. Maybe I have that in here? I may not have that in any of my electoral posts. I have to rectify that. Because, yeah, most of Europe, like, our Democrats are their conservative party in Europe, and Greens are effectively their left-leaning party in Europe. You just kind of see here, Clinton, Trump, they're all right-leaning, whereas Sanders, Stein is actually on the left. Yeah, I don't have one showing that. I need to, though. We need to find a place to put something like that, because that's kind of important. How do you think it would affect political climate if Kamala? Well, it wouldn't change things over much. I mean, it's just intersectional imperialism. I mean, just like it was under Obama. You know, bombs aren't going to stop falling. The racism isn't going to stop. I mean, they're still going to keep destroying everyone for fun and profit. It's just the view of the presidency is going to go down because of how fucking horrific she is. At least Joe is likable. Kamala is, she's just bad. She has like one of the lowest ratings of vice presidents in U.S. history or some shit like that. And she had basically no, she didn't have no votes, like a super small number of votes during the primaries. I mean, no one voted for her, not even people in her home state. So political climate isn't really going to change besides the United States being not liked as much. Won't be as bad as Trump, of course, because he was horrific, but You know, she's just a tool. She's a tool, intersectionalizing her way into a position of power. Yeah, exactly. Although, as I've said here before, like when Biden initially announced that she was his VP, I said within 6 months to 2 years, she will be president because Dementia Joe will step down. Now, I don't stand by that quite as much right now because he actually seems somewhat, you know, there-ish. But so he may not step down. He may do his full 4 years, but we'll see. But yeah, I can't imagine that Kamala will actually run for. Actually, Kamala will probably run again. But she's not going to do well. She'll do slightly less worse than she did this last time around. All these writers are just silly. They don't know history well enough. The U.S. will go to any lengths to protect its fascism. Look at the bombing of 1967. Yeah. That's the Tulsa. Is that Tulsa? Yeah, most definitely. It's the rioters aren't silly. The rioters are doing what needs to be done, because that, you know, like Dr. King says, right? Riots are the language of the unheard. Just what is it that America has tried? Okay. Yeah, I'm not specific familiar with those yet. You know, the riots are a direct biopsychosocial result of inequality and poverty and racism in this country. They're an inevitability as long as our country is as fucked as they are. The only way to prevent that sort of stuff to happening, and it's the core part of my policies. I have my own policies here. Pretty much, the only way to solve any problems is by solving inequality. If you do not solve inequality, you cannot solve any problem. I mean, almost all problems are created by inequality. And if you look at the Kerner report from 1967, which I have written about here, it said basically two essential things. If you want to keep race riots from happening, well, Americans need to stop being a bunch of racist fucks and lower inequality. And how do you prevent people from being racist? Well, that is systemically and structurally created by inequality. Almost all things can be solved by lowering inequality, period. It's that simple. Talking healthcare, education, housing, internet, clothing, transportation. It's difficult, though. It takes time. Look at Germany. Nazism is illegal, yet the majority of the population is still very racist against Jewish. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. But it's if it's done right, like in my post on what would how would a resource-based economy play out, I talk about how you get those social changes made. And you're right, it'll take about 4 generations, assuming you really hammer those social changes. And it requires broad values-based changes, which I talk about in my policies here. Philosophical pills for peace are the very core drivers of how you make that social change. If you don't create that values change based on interdependence, on equity, humanity, on the environment, justice and compassion being the core driver of how the lens through which you look at all things aren't going to change. And things also will never change if you don't attack inequality. Now, those countries still have levels of inequality which are much higher than it should be. Some of the countries that have the lowest levels of inequality in the world are the Nordic countries, right? And they don't have so much an issue with racism there, from my limited understanding, but they do have it from the standpoint of immigrants from the Middle East, because then you've got this strong cultural problem with the fundamentalism found in Islam. So there they've got some problems, from what I've heard from some people there. But that's not an inequality thing directly within their country, because they're importing someone else from a different culture, which has high levels of, patriarchy, religious fundamentalism, and that sort of thing. So inequality. If they destroy the inequality in those countries, then this would radically change everything. Would change all the things. Like my policies, I say high minimum wage, low maximum wage. It will be possible as long as it's allowed for leaders to utilize systemic racism or gains. Oh, right. Of course. And they can only, those leaders can only utilize racism for their own gains as long as inequality is a thing. It's kind of like chicken and the egg sort of a thing. It's much harder to use racism and emotional manipulation on a group where they're not necessarily going to be fall victim to that, because there's high levels of inequality, social trust is high, everyone's living a good life, and why are you talking bad about my friend next door because he's a person of color, right? Because then the problems that that Trump is blaming on black people or immigrants or the people from Mexico or Honduras, they're just not going to be there. If you get rid of those problems, and then it makes it very difficult for racists to do that sort of a thing. Then they just look like assholes. We're being assholes, which is what they are. It just becomes much more apparent when they have nothing to honestly bitch about. So the absolute destruction of inequality is the core driver of my whole policies. It's right here in the economic area. High minimum wage, low maximum wage, progressive basic income. I haven't quite put in universal basic services yet because I need to learn more about it. But ultimately, I think that's probably the place that we're going to have to go at some point, sooner than later, especially with the high levels of automation and AI, and especially as it has been accelerated through COVID. Because of COVID, they're going to be driving much faster to get to automate many other things. So therefore, more automation, more AI, fewer jobs. People are going to be out of their jobs, so they're going to be homeless. So that's going to need to be dealt with. UBI is a quick way of helping to deal with that in the short term. It's kind of a transitional state to get to universal basic services or that sort of a thing. I don't use UBI specifically. I don't like the universal aspect of it because that will increase inequality. I use progressive basic income. And if you want to read more about that, you can read about that in here. Wages, salary, yeah, must be in here. So I have a minimum wage of $75,000 and a maximum wage of 9 times that, $675,000. And then the marginal tax rate, still a key point, not the only one, I believe, that to why Martin Luther King Jr., he had made a speech regarding race yet as soon as he started. I don't think it was UBI. It was his anti-war sentiment. It's challenging the U.S. imperialism and capitalism itself. I think that was the core driver of it for me. UBI, never going to happen. Not there. That's just laughable in those times, right? Yeah. Many key factors. Yeah, fair. Yeah, but I think the biggest part was the anti-imperialism for me. So yeah, maximum wage of $675,000 and the marginal tax rate at $675,000 would be 100%. I need to adjust the poverty line. And yeah, here we go. Progressive basic income right here. So basically, we're trying to push everyone to the income of $75,000 to $85,000 or more. So basically, no taxes. You give 100% below $50,000, 75% at 50 to 65, 25% at 65 to 70. Then 80 or more, you don't get anything from it. So we're just trying to push people to the 75 or greater, and then they can go from there. All right. So In pushing to fully reopen schools, the White House is giving the green light to the criminal banning of mask mandates in schools, which have now been signed into law by Republican governors in Florida, Texas, Iowa, South Carolina, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Utah, and Arizona. I mean, it's going to have to happen. AI automation already here and growing fast with quantum computing. We are about to push to stage. We're quite a bit away from a K1 civilization. I have a whole post on that, because K1 requires us to be able to be completely sustainable for the most part, if not using fusion. This is a fun post to research, and yeah. That would be that we're not going to survive to a K1 status. I mean, the technological innovation that is happening is wild, and it is. It's going to keep increasing, and that's kind of the benefit of technology. It just goes faster and faster, especially when you've got like Google and Microsoft and others working on quantum computing. It's going to go faster, and even faster once we get that, and it's going to be insane, the sort of things that we're going to be able to do. Of course, you and I aren't going to have access to it, right? Just the 1%, as always. And that's especially important when it comes to climate change, because us plebes, us poors, are just going to die while the rich save themselves and get to have all the fun. They get to be sipping their martinis, comfortable air conditioning, while the rest of the world burns around them. Criminal banning of masks, which is fucked in the brain. These states, each of which is experiencing a significant surge in daily new cases, provide public education to a combined roughly 12.7 million children who will be packed into poorly ventilated buildings for hours each day. AI warfare has already started in the form of web attacks. Who knows what that will mean once they are more physical beings. Yeah, Boston Dynamics is doing a lot of work on that, right? Boston Dynamics and their robots. Oh yeah. Do you want Terminators? Because that's how you get Terminators, right? Yep, it's happening. I mean, we had an article on Israel having their dog-like rovers following their border, and they had guns on them. They could be automated. Oh yeah, it's coming. Boston Dynamics is both amazing and friend. Yeah, that's exactly right. What they're doing, it's really amazing. Really amazing. But yeah, no, really. I mean, do you want Terminators? That's how you get Terminators. You get advanced AI inside Boston Dynamics, and it's game over, man. It's game over, man. It's coming. You just gotta be careful. You know, like on Science and Futurism with Isaac Arthur. It's an amazing channel on YouTube. If you guys have not watched it, please look through this channel. I died when I found this channel. It is amazing. They cover everything about space, terraforming, traveling in space, light travel, terraforming, fusion, all that sort of stuff. Air soldiers will overtake the number of humans. It most definitely. I mean, you've already seen that with drones, right? Using technology as a way of inflicting damage at range and reducing the dangers to humans, most definitely, that's definitely going to be a thing. It is a thing now. They're working on it, and they're working on robotic soldiers right now. I mean, it's just a matter of when. And as long as we maintain nationalism, as long as we compete from nation to nation and business to business, we're going to be murdering people in ever more interesting ways, and it's a fucking complete and total waste of resources. He has this has been going on for like, I don't know, 3 to 5 years, and they put out new videos every Thursday. It's amazing. And policies, part of that was because of that channel. My policies are Interstellar New Deal, and I link to it from my Interstellar Humanity policies as well. Oh, there's a Neil deGrasse Tyson speech. Yeah, So yeah, and I'm running for school board as well. And I have a daughter who's 12, and they're going back to school, and they are getting rid of the mask mandate in my district too. So I'm fucking losing my mind. It's going to turn into a true chess game with no real life lost until less mainland attacks.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you. It's been a while, so I'm hoping to ask you two questions. If
Okay.
that's all right. First about the coronavirus pandemic, and then about a follow-up to Governor Cuomo, the report on him. On COVID-19, former President Trump has called for China to pay the United States more than $10 trillion in reparations as a result of letting the coronavirus escape Wuhan and infect other countries, causing, of course, 600,000 American deaths and economic devastation. President Biden hasn't called for reparations from China. Does he support that?
So here's the interesting thing about that. Now, there may be a case for that, and I've seen some evidence recently which may have had it, may support that it did escape from there. But that is less of a concern, because had the United States done what it was supposed to regarding the pandemic, had Trump not ended Obama's pandemic response unit, had Trump locked down, mask mandate, social distancing mandate, and all that on the federal level, the amount of people that we have lost here in this country wouldn't be anywhere near what it was. Had he been part of the solution, then this should be less of a problem. Sure, if it did come from, China, their laboratory, then that needs to be dealt with, and sure, some reparations, sure. But ultimately, we have to take responsibility for how much we fucked up as a country. And honestly, Trump should be held accountable for how much he didn't do anything and for the loss of life. That's the real questions that should be asked and that we should be dealing with there.
Then, does he think that China should pay us financially for what it has allowed to spread?
Our policy hasn't changed.
So is he open to?
Did you have another question?
Yes. In a follow-up to the report on Governor Cuomo's sexual harassment, a lot of men in politics have been accused of sexual harassment. President Biden was accused by female Secret Service agents of skinny dipping in front of them, offending them, according to former Washington Post reporter Ronald Kessler, who's an author as well. His former Senate aide Tara Reid accused him of sexual assault. The Washington Post and the New York Times have published multiple accounts of women who objected to the way President Biden touched them. Should there be an independent investigation of allegations into the president as there was into Governor Cuomo?
Bravo.
Well, first I would say the president has been clear and outspoken.
Yeah, that's good for you, dude. That's a reporter with some balls. Good for him. Good for him. 'Cause that's exactly what should be happening. China needs to face repercussions for the nuclear threats and aggressions, not a virus that has been known for about 8+ years. The issue is that war in China would mean a war with Russia, Korea. Yeah, that would be stupid. The United States and its imperialism needs a communist scapegoat, and China is just the one that they're doing currently. And part of that, it's not just because they're, quote, communist or whatever. They're not technically communist either, but that they are an emerging market growing really strong economically, with which, of course, we handed to them by handing them all of our manufacturing and impoverishing many, many people in our country. They didn't steal our jobs, they were given our jobs. So the United States has explicitly given them much of their economic advantage, made them into the enemy. Which is, which is what they want. If you create the enemy, they created ISIS, they created Al-Qaeda, right? They created the Taliban. It's much more effective if you create the enemy so you know who they are, and then you always have someone there to keep the imperialism and the fear-mongering going. Fucking stupid. So stupid. The United States is the largest terrorist organization in the world. Curly Bear, how you doing? You got here in the last 6 minutes. I'm getting in the car, but I was gonna listen to your stream while I drive. How much longer? Yeah, I've got 6 minutes left, girl. 6 minutes. Yeah, the Saturdays is from 3 to 5. So I know normally I go 5 to 7 during the weekdays. It'll be on YouTube or Twitch. You can watch there afterwards, and not as interesting. Do you think Trump pulled out the troops to prepare for war against China? No, I don't. I haven't seen a president openly say remarks about a country like that unless they're denouncing. Well, I don't think he did it for that. I don't know. I mean, we've been needing to do it for a very long time. Dang, my bad. Okay, all right. I hope you're having a great weekend. Good luck with whatever you're doing. Good to see ya. Now he killed Soleimani, right? I mean, I think that's with Iran. So I think if he was attempting any war overtures, it would be more with Iran because of that. There's reports of possibility. Yeah, I mean, the United States, as long as they can piss anyone off a little bit, just to keep the concept, the fear that we're going to be going to war with communist whoever, right? Then that's all they need. You know, Russia, China. Korea, right? Or whatever. Got to keep the sabers rattling so the U.S. imperialism and the bombing and the murdering people of color globally for fun and profit can keep going because it's so fucking profitable. Yeah, so there is that. My policy is right. The 4 deadly industries: military industrial complex. I can never remember them. Banking industry, pharmaceutical. My God, what is it? Banking, pharmaceutical, military industrial My fucking God. Why can't I remember the 4th one? Not big tech. They are problematic. Fuck. Never. Fossil fuel. Damn it, people. Fossil fuel industry. Banking, military industrial complex, fossil fuel, and pharmaceutical. There we go. Those 4. Those are the 4 deadly industries. They aren't deadly enough for me to remember, obviously. Yeah, big banks, big oil, pharmaceutical, military industrial complex. There we go. There we go. Fuck me. I'm old. Was broken up? No. How was oil broken up? Standard Oil? In the 70s? 100 years? Yeah, well, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. 100 years ago doesn't matter. Matters right now. I mean, there's what? I don't know. How many U.S. oil companies? This isn't what we're gonna want here. Because who owns what is what we need. Yeah, but they're still basically monopolies right now. No, that's not what I want. Because there can't be that many. We're still back to a level of monopolism on oil and that sort of stuff too. And they may have gotten rid of 100 years ago, but it's going to be back up to something similar. I mean, they still have more effects on our policies than just about than almost any other industry. Like banks, of course, want any war. Of course, we were in Iraq for oil, right? There's a few other countries that we're messing with in Central and South America for oil. Current 100-year technological advance in other facets is equal to 1,000 years of past. Yeah, yep, of course. It accelerates. The more technology you get, the more you unlock other techs. Yeah, it's like if you look on a game, civilization type game, you got your technological advancements here, farming, the wheel, fire. Then you've got carriers and nuclear power and fusion and roads and all that sort of stuff out here. Definitely. And one of the largest things that has caused our that acceleration, of course, is computers and then internet. Those are two of the biggest things that have caused technological advancement to go so fast. Cineral was an American oil producing established in 1870. Okay, Rockefeller. Okay, it was the largest oil refinery in the world at its height. Okay, its history is one of the first and largest multinational corporations ended in 11. Ruled that Standard Oil was legal monopoly. You're playing Civ 6? Cool. Yeah, oh no, definitely. And sure, it was broken apart then, but sure, it may be the largest at the time, but instead of having one, maybe we've got four now. I mean, the monopolies are still there. They may not be as big as they were, at its height, but there's gonna be four monopolies instead of one or whatever it is. We're still at a place here in this country where we, the people, have no power because all of the wealth and the power over any given industry is in a few companies. Like we had a giant ass post talking about food production. Food production is ultimately controlled by maybe 12 total companies, and within any individual type of food, there's basically 4 major companies that own everything, 3 to 4 companies that own everything, and it's gonna be very similar for every other industry that's out there. Every industry is monopolized. That is just the visceral result of capitalism. It will always be pooled at the top by a few. It's just a matter of, how many. Instead of 1, like in the early 1900s, now we've got 4 or 5 or 6. But still, that's still a high level of monopolization beyond, what would be anywhere near to what it needs to be, like several hundred. The reason oil is still used today is because monopolies and capitalism power. Yep, big business, big tech, big pharma all control the country more than the government itself. Yeah, and like on my policies, I say this, right? The United States, here we go, it's right here. The United States is not really a country anymore. It's the largest supranational corporate conglomerate with its own private military, which is by far the largest in the world, and by virtue, America's largest export is terrorism. Our primary export in this country is terrorism, because our country is controlled completely by corporations. We, the people, have nothing. We have no representation in government. The statistics show that. Us plebes, we don't matter because we don't pay for their re-election campaign and we don't pay for their corporate payday. Now here's this amazing quote here. Marilyn Houston, CEO of Lockheed Martin. I love the war in Yemen. It is great profits. No psychopathy here, right? None. So yeah, if you guys want to read more about where I stand in politics and stuff like that, this is my policy site. There's plenty of good stuff like this in here. How to fix some of the problems. And if you have any questions, comments, and suggestions on policies, I would love to hear it because I don't know all the things. So I spend time streaming here and reading and trying to figure stuff out. True, there's a reason that the rich pay less than half or no taxes. Yeah. Oh yeah, there is that huge ProPublica thing, right? That's they definitely don't. They pay like 5% or less in taxes. Some pay no in taxes, and then on top of paying no taxes, as an individual, they also get subsidies from that sort of thing. Oh, there's this one giant post. If you go to Discord, there's links to it in there. The other ProPublica post talking about how Bezos used a Roth IRA to become a billionaire. All right, if you've got money, it's easy to make money. If they keep their funds in assets such as stocks, they don't pay foreign taxes unless they sell. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah, I've studied some tax mitigation strategies over a decade ago. Exactly right. If they keep it into a Roth IRA, which they don't pay any taxes on when they take it out even, right? The Roth IRA is you can only use money which is pre-tax. So you've already paid taxes on it. And you put it in the Roth IRA, then any investments in there can grow and grow and grow and do whatever. And then when you want to take it out, you don't pay any taxes. Roth IRAs are amazing, especially if you have money, because it takes money to make money, right? The more money you have, the better an IRA can be, especially if you have access to insider trading, insider deals, and stuff like that, where your Roth IRA can fucking explode and make you rich as hell. And that's exactly what Bezos did. At Twitter's acquisitions, you can throw it up here real quick. We actually have to get going here in a little bit because it's 5 o'clock. IPO, sure. I'll believe that. If you guys want to support me, I've got my Patreon down below and direct, but they are a private company. I'm deep into crypto myself, a little concerned about US meddling. Still great. I sold mine. I made about 4,000 off it, which was about 10 times what I put into it like 5 or 6 years ago. So that was pretty cool. Good for you. If they are a private company, could be. I'm not sure how Twitter stands that way. For me, crypto isn't going to save anyone from anything. Eventually, it's going to get regulated or whatever, and it's going to be destroyed. It's just, those who are rich are going to have more crypto than anyone else. It's just another way of inequality to invest itself. People keep saying crypto is going to help save whatever. No, it might have some uses here and there in the short term, but ultimately it will be taken over by the rich who will own everything. The accumulation of riches towards the top 1% or whatever is still going to be a thing. It's just a matter of time. Make use of it while you can. Well, it's not like that, but eventually it's going to be just as broken as everything else. Monetary systems are a disease and are why our world is so messed up. And if you want to read kind of about that sort of a thing, I have a giant post here on that, the cancer of capitalism, which is actually about monetary systems, but that's there you go. All right, everyone. I've reached my 2-hour mark. I do have to get going for the wife and daughter, get ready, get home. So I leave this end for any last minute questions, comments, or suggestions before we call this a day. Last chance for comments. Anything at all? I play Warhammer 40k Battle Sector. Thank you so much. I stream on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Central, Thursdays 5 p.m. Central, which is kind of an awkward time, and then Saturdays at 3 p.m. Central for 2 hours each. Okay, list of mergers and acquisitions by Twitter. Okay. Ooh. Yeah, and this is the thing, right? When you have giant ass corporations, they will gobble up everything. Google does the same thing. Probably more so than anyone. Yeah, Google's nom 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 nom. Yeah. Yep, so 2 hours. At some point I need to reclaim a third hour on one of these days, because I was doing Fridays for 3 hours, and I really missed that third hour because there's just so much more we can cover. Just 2 hours, it just isn't enough, but that's just kind of the way my schedule ended up going. And in my About panel, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, my blog, Discord, all that sort of stuff is down there. Yeah, it is. It's Google is really in its own. Google and Amazon are kind of in its own, it's own level altogether. Most definitely. If you're working for the Chinese government. Well, I mean, they and Facebook and all the other major companies do work with China and Israel as well, right? To do censoring based on their requirements, right? I mean, we've known that. Of course, that's a thing, because it's more important that they make money than it is to support human rights. It's always gonna be about money. That's okay. So if you guys want one post to read, this is the post that kind of explains the very basics of all the problems within humanity. Tension within methods of exchange. It's like a 10-minute read, a 9-minute read. This will explain all the things. So for Twitter and Facebook and Google, every decision is about how much money are we going to make, or are we going to do the right thing for humanity? Profit is what wins, not telling Israel and China to go fuck themselves, right? Because you're murdering people and all that sort of stuff, right? It's about the money. They have to keep the money instead of doing the right thing. It's that tension within methods of exchange. That is why humanity will always be at war, murdering each other for fun and profit. Woo! All right. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you gifting me with your time. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. Stay safe. Stay COVID free. And again, I'll be on Tuesdays at 5 Central. Tuesdays and Thursdays at 5 Central. And then Saturdays at 3 p.m. So everyone have a great weekend. And we'll see you guys next week.
Just me and you, let's make up all the rules. Count to 10 and watch the stars turn blue. Watch the